Ron DeSantis leaned into his microphone and said these words to Gavin Newsom: "You ruined California. Now are you coming to ruin America too?" But Newsom's response would leave DeSantis completely helpless and humiliate him on national television. Fox News' state-of-the-art studio in Manhattan had an electrically charged atmosphere this November evening. This special program, announced as the Great Red versus Blue Debate, was bringing together America's two most talked-about governors face-to-face for the first time. The studio audience, cameras, technical crew, and moderators had prepared for a historic confrontation. 46-year-old Florida Governor Ronald DeSantis was one of America's most fiery Republican politicians. Born in Jacksonville, he had grown up in a middle-class Italian-American family. His father was a blue-collar worker who installed Nielsen rating boxes. His mother was a pediatric nurse. This working-class background formed the foundation of DeSantis's populist political persona. He had graduated summa cum laude from Yale University and completed Harvard Law School with magna cum laude honors. These Ivy League credentials demonstrated his intellectual capacity, but he downplayed this in political messaging to avoid the elite label. As military service, he had been a JAG officer in the Navy, serving in Iraq and Guantanamo Bay. He was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2013, becoming an active member of the Freedom Caucus. During his 6 years in Congress, he had gained a reputation as a conservative hardliner, advocating for limited government, fiscal conservatism, and strong border security. During the Trump era, he had been a reliable ally, consistently supporting the president's policies. In 2018, he entered the Florida gubernatorial race, won the Republican primary with Trump's endorsement, and defeated Democrat Andrew Gillum by a narrow margin in the general election. As governor, he had built an impressive record: booming economy, growing population, implementing conservative policies. His COVID-19 response had been controversial but effective: early reopening, opposition to school closures, resistance to mask mandates. This success had made Florida the symbol of the national conservative movement with the Free State of Florida brand. DeSantis' approval ratings were consistently high. His re-election was an overwhelming victory. National Republicans were seriously considering his 2028 presidential ambitions. In terms of physical appearance, DeSantis was an imposing figure: 5 feet 11 inches height, athletic build, dark hair, and penetrating brown eyes. Tonight he wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, red tie conveying conservative elegance, displaying confident posture. His body language was aggressive but controlled, projecting an alpha male demeanor. Sitting across from him was 56-year-old Gavin Newsom, California's charismatic governor who represented the complete opposite of DeSantis. Born in San Francisco to a wealthy family, he had grown up with privilege but progressive values. His father was a state appeals court judge. His mother worked in administrative positions. Close ties with the Getty family provided early political connections. He had earned a political science degree from Santa Clara University, entered the business world, and became a successful entrepreneur in the restaurant, wine, and hotel industries. He had founded the Plumpjack wine shops and restaurants chain, accumulating significant wealth. This business success had established his executive credentials. His political career began with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, where he was elected as the youngest member ever. In 2004, he was elected San Francisco mayor, immediately attracting national attention because he issued same-sex marriage licenses, a groundbreaking and controversial move at the time. This action established his reputation as a progressive champion. He became California Lieutenant Governor in 2011 and was elected governor in 2019. In California, he had aggressively pursued a progressive agenda: climate change initiatives, healthcare expansion, immigration protection, gun control measures. His COVID-19 response had been strict but science-based, implementing early lockdowns. In 2021, he survived a recall election, achieving victory by an overwhelming margin. This recall campaign had significantly boosted his national profile, and he began to be seen as a rising star within the Democratic Party. Media appearances, policy innovations, and political skill were fueling his 2028 presidential ambitions. Physically, Newsom was a striking figure: 6 feet 3 inches height, distinguished silver hair, sharp features, California casual but sophisticated style. Tonight he maintained a polished appearance in a charcoal gray Armani suit and blue tie. His body language was confident but relaxed, radiating natural charisma. The contrast between the two politicians was dramatic: DeSantis compact but intense, showing working-class roots and military bearing. Newsom tall and elegant, displaying privileged background but accessible demeanor. Policy-wise, they were complete opposites, conservative versus progressive, traditional values versus social change, limited government versus active government intervention. Fox News had promoted this debate as a major programming event. Massive audience was anticipated with taglines like Red State versus Blue State, Conservative versus Liberal, Future of America. Sean Hannity had been chosen as moderator, making careful preparation to ensure fair but engaging discussion. The studio setup mimicked the presidential debate format, two podiums facing each other, American flags backdrop, professional lighting ensuring optimal TV appearance. The audience was carefully selected, equal numbers of Republican and Democratic supporters, creating an electric atmosphere. Camera positions captured multiple angles, documenting every facial expression and gesture. The pre-debate build-up had been intense for weeks. Both governors had conducted respective media tours, rehearsing talking points, conducting opposition research. DeSantis' team had focused on Newsom's issues in California regarding homelessness, crime rates, business exodus. Newsom's team had prepared to criticize DeSantis' social issues stances, education funding cuts, environmental policies. Polls showed a tight race before the debate. Republican viewers favored DeSantis while Democrats supported Newsom. Independent voters were the critical demographic. Their perception could determine this debate's winner. The stakes were enormous. Both men's 2028 presidential hopes depended on this performance. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Sean Hannity delivered his opening remarks. Good evening, I'm Sean Hannity, and welcome to this special Fox News debate between two of America's most prominent governors. Tonight, we have Florida's Ron DeSantis and California's Gavin Newsom discussing the critical issues facing our nation. This promises to be a spirited exchange of ideas representing different visions for America's future. Hannity continued, our format will be direct questions followed by responses and rebuttals. Gentlemen, you each have agreed to substantive policy discussion and respectful discourse. Let's begin with our first topic, economic policy and state governance. The first 15 minutes passed relatively civilly. Both governors presented familiar talking points. DeSantis emphasized Florida's economic success, business-friendly policies, population growth. Newsom defended California's innovation economy, climate leadership, progressive social policies. The tone was professional, but underlying tension was obvious. Hannity began to escalate the questions. Governor DeSantis, Governor Newsom argues that California leads America in innovation and economic dynamism. How do you respond? DeSantis' response was measured but pointed. Sean, California might have innovation, but they also have the highest taxes, worst regulatory environment, and massive exodus of businesses and residents. People vote with their feet, and they're choosing Florida over California by overwhelming margins. Newsom counterattacked smoothly. Governor DeSantis conveniently ignores that California has the world's fifth-largest economy, generates more federal tax revenue than any other state, and leads in technology, entertainment, and agriculture. Our policies create prosperity, not just for the wealthy, but for working families. Tension was building, but still within normal debate parameters. Then Hannity asked the question that would trigger everything. Governor DeSantis, critics argue that your policies, while popular in Florida, couldn't work nationally. Governor Newsom, same question about California's approach. How would your state model translate to America as a whole? This was the moment DeSantis would make his critical mistake. Instead of focusing on policy specifics, he went into personal attack mode. He leaned aggressively into the microphone, looking directly at Newsom and launching his provocative statement. You ruined California. Now are you coming to ruin America too? The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The audience audibly gasped, cameras immediately focused on both men's faces. DeSantis smirked confidently, believing he had delivered a devastating blow. Newsom's initial expression was surprise, then quickly shifted to something more calculating. Hannity attempted to restore order. Governor DeSantis, let's keep this focused on policy. But DeSantis wasn't finished with his attack. Look, Sean, facts are facts. California has the highest homelessness rate, people leaving in droves, businesses fleeing high taxes and ridiculous regulations, crime rates skyrocketing, schools failing, infrastructure crumbling. This is the model Governor Newsom wants for America? Continuing aggressively. While California burns, literally and figuratively, Florida thrives. We have fiscal responsibility, law and order, educational choice, business growth. That's real leadership, not the failed liberal experiment we see in California. The Republican section of the audience applauded enthusiastically while the Democratic section sat silent, clearly stunned by the attack's personal nature. Cameras captured Newsom's reaction carefully. He remained calm, but keen observers could see a subtle shift in his demeanor. This wasn't anger. This was someone preparing a devastating counterattack. Newsom calmly reached for the folder beside him, a move that would prove prophetic. His voice remained measured but carried new authority. Governor DeSantis, since you want to discuss ruining things, perhaps we should examine your record more carefully. DeSantis realized too late that he might have walked into a trap, but couldn't back down without appearing weak. Please, enlighten us about Florida's supposed failures, he said sarcastically. Oh, I will, Newsom replied, opening his folder. But first, let me address your California claims with actual facts, not Fox News talking points. For more information about this incredible confrontation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Because Newsom's next move was something DeSantis never expected. Newsom stood slightly, establishing a commanding presence. Governor DeSantis, you mentioned homelessness. Let's talk numbers. California houses 12% of America's population, but provides shelter for 30% of America's homeless, because we actually try to help rather than shipping them to other states like Florida does. The first counterpunch landed cleanly. DeSantis tried to interrupt, but Newsom continued relentlessly. You mentioned business exodus? California's GDP grew 7.8% last year, fastest growth rate in the nation. We added more jobs than Texas, Florida, and New York combined. Our technology sector alone generates more revenue than most entire countries. The audience was beginning to sense a shift. Newsom's calm confidence contrasted sharply with DeSantis's increasingly aggressive posture. Republican supporters who had cheered DeSantis's initial attack were now sitting quieter, while Democrats began to perk up. Newsom was just warming up, facts flowing smoothly and authoritatively. Education? California's public university system is globally ranked #1. Our K-12 per pupil spending increased 40% under my administration. Meanwhile, Florida ranks 48th in teacher pay and 45th in education funding nationwide. DeSantis's face was visibly reddening, his earlier confidence beginning to evaporate like morning mist. He attempted a weak response. Those are manipulated statistics designed to make California look better. Manipulated? Newsom interrupted sharply, pulling out an official document with government letterhead clearly visible to the cameras. These are from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Department of Education, and ironically, your own Florida Department of Revenue. Would you like me to cite specific page numbers and sources? The studio audience dynamic had shifted dramatically in just a few minutes. The Republican section was noticeably quieter, while the Democratic section was beginning to respond with increasing enthusiasm. Independent viewers watching at home were witnessing DeSantis on the defensive for the first time in his political career. But Newsom was far from finished. This was just the opening salvo of what would become a complete political annihilation. Since you want to discuss governing competence and accountability, Newsom said, his voice taking on the prosecutorial tone that had made him famous during his years as San Francisco's district attorney. Let's examine Florida's actual record under your so-called leadership. From his meticulously organized folder, he extracted a thick document marked with an official seal that made cameras zoom in immediately. The document was clearly labeled, Official, State of Florida, with multiple security watermarks and official stamps. Governor DeSantis, this is your own administration's internal report on Hurricane Ian recovery efforts. The document that your office tried to classify and hide from public view. Are you familiar with page 47, section 3, subsection B? DeSantis's face went from red to pale in a matter of seconds. He clearly recognized the document, but had absolutely no idea how Newsom had obtained classified state materials. His voice cracked slightly as he responded, That's internal state business that has no bearing on this debate. Internal business? Newsom's voice rose with righteous indignation. Internal business that shows massive corruption and gross incompetence in handling a natural disaster? I think the American people would disagree about its relevance. He continued with devastating precision. Your emergency management director, who happens to be your former campaign manager, awarded $200 million in no-bid contracts to companies owned by your major campaign donors. Companies with zero disaster recovery experience, zero relevant equipment, and zero qualified personnel. Audible gasps echoed throughout the studio audience. This information was not public knowledge. Newsom clearly had access to explosive insider information that could completely destroy DeSantis politically. Furthermore, Newsom continued relentlessly, his voice growing stronger with each revelation. This report documents that your administration knew the levees would fail in low-income neighborhoods, but chose not to evacuate those areas because, and I quote directly from page 52, political optics of forced evacuation in minority communities could harm the governor's national profile and presidential ambitions. The silence in the studio was deafening. Even Sean Hannity looked stunned, clearly unprepared for this level of explosive revelation. DeSantis was now visibly sweating, his tie seeming to tighten around his neck like a noose. Those documents are taken completely out of context. DeSantis stammered desperately, but his voice carried no conviction whatsoever. Out of context, Newsom pulled out a second, even thicker document. This is sworn testimony from your former Deputy Chief of Staff, Maria Rodriguez, stating under oath that you personally prioritized photo opportunities and cable news appearances over actual emergency response coordination. While people were literally drowning in their homes, you were more concerned about your CNN and Fox News coverage ratings. The studio atmosphere was becoming electric with tension. Journalists were frantically scribbling notes. Audience members were pulling out phones to record, and political observers realized they were witnessing a historic political assassination in real time. DeSantis attempted another desperate round of damage control. This is obviously a coordinated political hit job designed to damage my reputation. Political hit job? Newsom's voice rose to a level of moral indignation that filled the entire studio. 17 people died unnecessarily because of your incompetence, your corruption, and your sociopathic political calculations. Their families deserve answers and justice, not your pathetic deflection and lies. He wasn't finished with his systematic destruction, but let's talk about ruining things on a more personal level, Governor DeSantis. Should we discuss your secret business dealings with Roger Stone? The offshore bank accounts that your wife Casey maintains in the Cayman Islands? The education technology contracts worth $50 million that were awarded to companies that just happened to employ your relatives. Each revelation hit DeSantis like a physical blow to the solar plexus. He was completely unprepared for this level of detailed, devastating attack. His usual aggressive confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by desperate defensive posturing and visible panic. Hannity tried desperately to intervene and restore some semblance of control. Gentlemen, perhaps we should return to substantive policy discussions rather than personal attacks. No, Sean, Newsom said firmly, his authority now completely dominating the studio. Governor DeSantis made this intensely personal when he accused me of ruining California while positioning himself as some kind of ethical alternative. The American people deserve to know the complete truth about Florida's so-called success story and the man behind it. Newsom pulled out a third document, this one even more ominous looking with multiple official seals and security classifications. Governor DeSantis, do you remember your private conversation with Disney executives on March 15th regarding their opposition to your anti-LGBTQ legislation? DeSantis's eyes widened in genuine panic, like a deer caught in headlights. I don't know what you're referring to, and I resent the implication. Really? Newsom's smile was predatory now. Because I have a complete audio recording of that conversation where you offered to kill the legislation entirely in exchange for a $50 million donation to your presidential campaign exploratory fund. Complete, absolute silence fell over the massive studio. Even the camera operators seemed to stop breathing. If this allegation was true, it represented massive corruption that could end DeSantis' career immediately and potentially result in federal criminal charges. You're lying, DeSantis said weakly, but his voice carried absolutely no conviction and his body language screamed guilt. Newsom held up a small digital recorder, his finger positioned dramatically over the play button. Should I play it for everyone here tonight, Governor? Your exact words were, and I quote, $50 million gets you anything you want from me. The legislation disappears, regulations change, whatever Disney needs. Money talks, everything else is just political theater. DeSantis was now completely cornered with absolutely no avenue of escape. His political future was hanging by the thinnest of threads, Sweat was clearly visible on camera, and his hands were trembling slightly. "You can't. That would be an illegal recording." "Actually, it's perfectly legal," Newsom replied with smooth legal precision. "Florida is a one-party consent state for audio recordings, as you should know since you signed that legislation yourself. Disney's legal team was very thorough in ensuring complete compliance with your state's own laws." The studio audience erupted in a mixture of gasps, nervous laughter, and scattered applause. Republican supporters looked absolutely devastated while Democrats were beginning to cheer openly. Independent viewers were witnessing the complete political destruction of a major presidential candidate in real time on national television. But Newsom had saved his most devastating, career-ending revelation for the grand finale. "Finally, Governor DeSantis, let's discuss the real reason why you launched this desperate, personal attack against me tonight. You see, I know about your little secret problem that you've been desperately trying to hide from the American people." DeSantis's face went from pale white to a sickly gray color in a matter of seconds. What problem are you talking about?" Newsom pulled out his final document. This one labeled in bold red letters, "Confidential medical records, patient privacy protected." The implications of possessing such documentation were absolutely staggering. 3 weeks ago, you were privately diagnosed with early-stage liver disease, most likely caused by years of chronic alcohol abuse that you've been hiding from voters, from your staff, and apparently from your wife. Your personal physicians recommended immediate medical treatment and significant stress reduction. Instead of following medical advice, you're here tonight attacking me in a desperate attempt to distract from your personal health crisis and your mounting political corruption scandals. The medical revelation was like detonating a nuclear bomb in the studio. DeSantis tried desperately to speak, but absolutely no words would come out of his mouth. His entire carefully constructed political persona, the strong, confident, alpha male leader, was crumbling completely on live national television. "You want to talk about ruining things, Governor DeSantis? You've systematically ruined your own health through alcoholism. You've ruined your state's emergency response through corruption and incompetence. You've ruined your ethical reputation through bribery and nepotism. And now you've ruined your political future through your own arrogance and stupidity, all in pursuit of presidential power that you'll never, ever achieve." Newsom delivered his final, killing blow with the precision of a master executioner. The people of Florida and America deserve so much better than a corrupt, alcoholic, incompetent governor who prioritizes his personal ambition over public service, who lets people die for political gain, and who sells legislation to the highest bidder. DeSantis attempted one last, pathetically desperate response. "This is all lies. This is character assassination. This is a coordinated political hit job." But the damage was absolutely complete and irreversible. His voice was weak and shaking, his body language was completely defeated, and his credibility was utterly destroyed. The studio audience, television viewers, and political commentators had all witnessed the total political annihilation of what had been considered a major presidential contender. Hannity, struggling desperately to maintain any semblance of professional composure, attempted to wrap up the segment. "I think we're unfortunately out of time for tonight's debate." "Actually, Sean," Newsom interrupted calmly, "I have one final piece of information that Governor DeSantis and the American people should know about." He pulled out one last document, this one with FBI letterhead clearly visible to all the cameras. "Governor DeSantis, you should be aware that a comprehensive federal investigation into your administration's corruption, your personal finances, and your potential violations of federal campaign finance laws officially begins Monday morning at 9 a.m. I strongly suggest you hire the very best legal counsel that money can buy." DeSantis completely slumped in his chair, utterly and totally defeated. His 2028 presidential ambitions, his governorship, his reputation, and quite possibly his personal freedom, all destroyed in just 45 minutes on national television. Newsom remained standing throughout, maintaining his commanding presence, having just delivered one of the most devastating and complete political performances in the entire history of American politics. Thank you, Sean. This has been extremely educational for everyone involved. As the closing credits began to roll, cameras captured the stark contrast. DeSantis stumbling off the stage like a broken man, while Newsom confidently shook hands with audience members, his political stature enhanced immeasurably. The visual metaphor couldn't have been more perfect or more devastating. The immediate aftermath was brutal and swift. Within just 2 hours, hashtag DeSantis destroyed was trending worldwide on every social media platform. Video clips of his destruction went viral across TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Cable news networks provided 24/7 coverage analyzing every single moment of the complete political annihilation. Republican Party leadership immediately began distancing themselves from DeSantis. Donald Trump issued a characteristically blunt statement. Ron had a very bad night. A very, very bad night. Probably the worst night in political history. He should probably focus on Florida instead of national ambitions that clearly aren't going to happen. Major Florida newspapers, including those that had previously supported DeSantis, published scathing editorials calling for his immediate resignation. The FBI investigation that Newsom had revealed did indeed begin exactly as promised on Monday morning. By the end of the week, facing mounting legal pressure, political isolation, and health concerns, DeSantis announced that he would not seek re-election as Florida governor and was withdrawing from all national political activities. Newsom's masterful performance catapulted him immediately to frontrunner status for the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination. His combination of thorough preparation, intellectual sophistication, and absolutely ruthless political skill impressed party leaders, major donors, and voters across the country. This incredible political destruction perfectly demonstrates what happens when unchecked arrogance collides head-on with meticulous preparation. DeSantis came to attack and destroy, but Newsom came armed with facts, evidence, and receipts, and completely obliterated his opponent's entire career. If you enjoyed watching this explosive political takedown, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more incredible political confrontations that reshape American politics forever. Comment below. Do you think DeSantis can ever recover from this complete disaster? Share this video with anyone who loves seeing corrupt politicians held accountable for their actions. Because sometimes, one debate performance can change everything forever, and this was definitely one of those moments that will be studied in political science classes for decades to come.